What you are about to hear is inspired by the true story of Ifrah Ahmed. This narrative was constructed from interviews, public documents, and Ifrah's own accounts. Some dialogue and specific details have been adapted to create a more engaging narrative experience, but the essence of the story, the pain, the survival, the transformation, is completely real. This is a story about finding your voice when you are silenced, about transforming trauma into purpose.
Have you ever been so ashamed of something that happened to you that you couldn't even look in the mirror? I had. For years, I carried a pain I couldn't even name. I thought it was only mine. I thought it was normal. I thought it was my fault. Until the day an Irish doctor looked at me with horror. And I realized it wasn't normal. That wasn't right. And it wasn't my fault. At that moment, something changed inside me. Shame turned to anger. Anger turned to strength. And strength turned to purpose. I was just a 17-year-old refugee who barely spoke English. I had no family, no money, no voice, but it had a story, and this story needed to be told. My name is Ifrah Ahmed. I was born in Mogadishu. I survived genital mutilation. I survived war. I survived trafficking. And today I am no longer a victim. I am the voice of millions of women who still cannot speak. Mogadishu smelled of spices and dust. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of the market waking up with me. Voices shouting prices, goats bleating. The smell of incense mixed with the sweat of a day that hadn't even begun yet. My father would leave early to take care of the animals. He was a veterinarian, big, calloused hands, but gentle. He always came back with funny stories about stubborn cows or dogs that didn't want to take their medicine. My mother was a midwife. She spent her nights away from home, helping women bring life into the world. When she returned, she had that tired but happy look, as if each baby born was a personal miracle of hers. I loved watching her hands, quick, precise, always knowing exactly what to do. I wanted to be like her when I grew up. The war already existed. It always existed, at least in my memory. But back then, it was still possible to live. It was still possible to laugh. It was still possible to be a child. I was 8 years old when my grandmother called me. "Ifrah, come here, my girl." She sat in the shade, weaving a basket. Her face was full of wrinkles that looked like maps of all the stories she had lived. "Today is a special day," she said, smiling. My heart skipped a beat. A special day meant sweets. It meant a party. It meant attention. "You're becoming a woman." I didn't quite understand what that meant. But the way she spoke, seriously, almost solemnly, made me stay quiet. All the women in our family go through this. Your mother, your aunts, myself. It's tradition. It's protection. Protection from what? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. Children don't ask questions. Children obey. She took my hand. Her skin was rough and warm. She led me along a dirt path to a small cabin, away from the main houses. Other girls were already there. I recognized some of them. Cousins, neighbors, all quiet, all with that same look, fear trying to disguise itself as courage. The smell was wrong. It wasn't spices. It wasn't incense. It was blood, iron, something alive turning into something dead. One of the girls started to cry softly. My grandmother murmured, "It's quick. You are strong." My uncle was there. He was a doctor. He was wearing a white coat, but it had dark stains on the sleeves. "Lie down here, Ifrah." His voice was soft. As if he were asking me to go to sleep, I lay down on the ground. Hard-packed earth, cold, hard. My grandmother held my legs, firmly, too tightly. I tried to move. "Stay still, my girl. It will pass soon." I saw the blade, small, bright, with remnants of something I didn't want to identify. No, but it was too late. Pain has no words. There's no comparison. It's as if the entire world is reduced to a single point of fire piercing through your body. I screamed. I screamed until my throat tore, until there was no more sound, only desperate air escaping from me as if I were drowning. "Ready, ready," my grandmother would say, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. My uncle used to sew, the needle going in and out. I could feel every stitch. "This will protect you," he murmured. "It will keep you pure." Pure of what? I was a child. They tied my legs together with cloths, tightly, so tightly I could barely breathe. "You can't open your legs. It needs to heal." They carried me back home. Every movement was agony. The other girls stayed in the cabin, waiting for their turn. In the following days, I lay in a dark corner of the house, fever, cold sweats, pain that never went away. Peeing was torture. It burned like fire. It took so long that I held it in as long as I could, until I couldn't anymore. My mother would come in, put wet cloths on my forehead, and whisper things I couldn't understand. One of the girls who was with me in the cabin didn't come home. "Infection," they said. "God's will," they said. No one cried out loud, only in silence, as if even sadness needed to be contained. Weeks later, I was able to walk again, slowly, always slowly. My grandmother hugged me. "Now you are a real woman. Your husband will respect you. Your family will be proud." Husband? I was 8 years old, but I didn't say anything. Life returned to normal, or at least to what was considered normal in Mogadishu. I helped my mother. I played with the other children. I avoided running because it still hurt. The war grew louder, closer, more real. Bombs exploding in the distance, gunfire cutting through the night. My father started going out less. My mother started crying more. I grew up. 11 years, 12 years. The body is changing. Hips are widening. Breasts are beginning to develop. And the men began to look at them differently. It was no longer a look of, "There goes the veterinarian's daughter." It was something else, something that made me want to disappear. It was one afternoon that everything changed. I was 12 years old. I was coming back from the market with a bag of rice. The sky was gray, heavy, as if it knew what was going to happen. I heard the gunshots, too close. I ran. I dropped the rice. I ran until my lungs screamed. I hid behind a ruined wall, ruins of a house that had once belonged to someone, to a family that perhaps no longer existed. The smell of gunpowder burned my nose. 3 men appeared, dirty uniforms, weapons slung over their shoulders, empty eyes. They saw me. They smiled. That wasn't the kind of smile you want to see. "Look what we found." I tried to run, but they were faster. Sometimes physical pain isn't the worst kind of pain. Sometimes the worst pain is realizing that your body is no longer yours, that you have no control, that no matter how much you scream, no one will come. When it was over, they left. They laughed, as if it were just another ordinary afternoon. I stayed there, on the ground, bleeding again, but this time the blood was different. That blood was from something being ripped away. Not cut, ripped away. I managed to get up after, I don't know how long. I stumbled back to my grandmother's house. She saw me. She understood. He didn't ask anything. He just washed me. He dressed me. He put me to bed. "No one can know," she whispered. If they find out, no man will want you. I was devastated, and her concern was whether anyone would want me. But again, I didn't say anything. Children don't talk, not even when they should be shouting. And it was in that moment, lying in the dark, listening to the bombs falling outside and feeling the pain tearing inside, that I understood something. Being a woman in Somalia meant carrying pain that no one saw. It meant surviving in silence. But I didn't know yet that one day, that same silent pain would transform into the loudest voice I would ever have, because the worst was yet to come. And when it arrived, I would have no choice anymore, or I would speak, or I would disappear forever. My grandmother didn't call a doctor after that afternoon. There were no doctors available for that sort of thing. She took care of it herself. She washed the wounds with hot water. She applied herbs that stung so much that I bit the cloth to keep from screaming. "You need to be stitched up again," she said a few days later. I looked at her, confused. "It's open. You need to close it. Otherwise, when you get married, your husband will find out. Who knows what? That I was raped, that 3 men destroyed me, and then laughed. But again, I didn't say anything. At 13 years old, I was stitched up for the second time. Same cabin, same smell of blood, same pain coursing through every cell of my body. But this time, I didn't scream. My voice had faded that afternoon among the ruins. The war got worse. Mogadishu was no longer a city. It was a battlefield disguised as a home. You learned to sleep to the sound of gunshots. You learned to run even before seeing the danger. You learned not to ask about neighbors who disappeared overnight. My father and brothers went out less and less. My mother stopped delivering babies. Women no longer left home to give birth. They gave birth wherever they were when the contractions started, and many died. I was 15 years old when my grandmother announced it. "You're going to get married." It wasn't a question, it was information. "He's a good man, 50 years old, widower. He has a house. He has money." 50 years, I was 15. "I don't want to," I said. The first time in years I'd said no to her. She looked at me as if I had committed a crime. "Do you think you have a choice? After what happened to you, he still accepts you. That's lucky." Sort. That word hurt more than any blade. The wedding was quick. No party, no joy. He took me to his house that same night, the wedding night. The second pain for women. My grandmother was right. He tore what had been stitched, carelessly, without gentleness. I bled again. He seemed satisfied. "You were pure," he said, as if it were a compliment. I just wanted to die. The following years are blurry stains on my memory. He hit me. Not every day, but enough for me to never relax. A dish washed the wrong way, a word spoken in the wrong tone, a look he interpreted as disrespect. His hands were heavy. I learned to walk in silence, to breathe in silence, to exist in silence. Sometimes, when he was traveling, I would look at the door and think, what if I just leave? But where to? The war was everywhere. And a woman alone in the street was an easy target. I was left, because staying seemed like the only option. 2006 arrived like a storm. The Battle of Mogadishu raged around us. It wasn't just distant gunfire anymore. It was bombings, buildings collapsing, people running with what little they could carry. My husband left one morning and didn't come back. I don't know if he died. I don't know if he ran away. I don't know if he simply abandoned me. And I realized with a morbid relief that I didn't care. I went back to my grandmother's house, or to what was left of it. Half of the ceiling had collapsed. The walls were riddled with bullet holes, but she was still there, sitting in the same corner, weaving the same basket, as if the world wasn't ending around her. "Ifrah," she said when she saw me, "you can't stay here." "Where am I going?" "Your uncle has a contact, someone who can get you out of the country." My heart raced. "Where to?" "Your aunt. In the United States. She sent money." "America." A place I only knew from stories, where women walked alone in the streets, where there was no war, where there was food every day. It seemed unbelievable. "But you have to go now," my grandmother continued. "Today the man is waiting. And you and my father, my brothers," she looked away, "they are fighting. We can't go, but you can." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I wasn't going to leave her. But the truth is, I wanted to go. I wanted it so badly it hurt. My uncle took me to a meeting point, a destroyed street where other refugees were already waiting. Women, children, some older men. They all had the same expression, fear mixed with desperate hope. A man wearing sunglasses approached. "Are you Ifrah?" "Absent." "Do you have the money?" My uncle handed over an envelope. The man explained. He gestured toward an old, rusty bus. "Go in. Don't talk to anyone. Don't ask questions." I hugged my uncle. He smelled of sweat and smoke. "May God protect you," he whispered. I got on the bus. The seat was torn. It smelled of mold and gasoline. Other women were already there. Empty eyes, trembling hands. The bus started moving. We traveled for days or weeks. I lost count. We stopped in places that had no names. We ate when someone remembered to give us food. We slept sitting up. One of the women next to me whispered, They say we're going to Europe, but I've heard stories." "What stories?" "Women who disappear, who never reach where they promised to go." My stomach churned. When we finally stopped, it was night, a place without light, only silhouettes. Men started taking the women off the bus, separating them, choosing them. A girl was crying. "Come with me," one of them said, pulling her by the arm. She screamed. Nobody did anything. The bus driver looked at me. He gave a discreet nod. "You, stay." I waited for everyone to leave. He approached, heart racing, but he only said, "My wife is from Mogadishu. I'm not going to hand you over to those men. You're coming with me." I don't know why I trusted him. Perhaps because he had no choice. Perhaps because something in his eyes was human. I stayed at his house for a few days, in hiding. His wife gave me clean clothes, hot food. We didn't talk much. But she would hold my hand sometimes, as if he knew. A man appeared, young, thin, intelligent eyes. "I'm Hassan," he said. "I'll take you to your destination. America." He hesitated. "I'm going to take you to a safe place." He handed me a passport. The photo wasn't mine, but it looked similar. "When we go through immigration, you don't speak. Understand, I'll speak for you." I waved. The airport was chaos, people running, police officers shouting, lights too bright. Hassan was guiding me, steady, confident. At immigration, the officer looked at my passport. He looked at me. My heart almost exploded. Hassan said something. He laughed. The officer stamped his stamp. We boarded the plane. The first time I flew, the noise of the engines terrified me. But when we took off and I saw Mogadishu getting smaller down below, something inside me broke. I cried, silently, until I had no more tears left. Hassan didn't ask anything. He only offered a handkerchief. Hours later, or days, I don't know, we landed. Hassan woke me up. We've arrived. We got off the plane. Cold air hit my face. So cold it hurt. I looked around. Signs. All in English. White people. Lots of white people. Where are we? I asked. Hassan looked away. Dublin. Dublin? Ireland. My world stopped. But my aunt is in America. I know, but I couldn't take you there. I'm sorry. He handed over a piece of paper with an address on it. Go to that place. Ask for asylum. They will help you. Wait. But he was already walking, quickly disappearing into the crowd. I stayed there, alone, in a country I didn't know, wearing clothes that are too thin for the cold, without speaking the language, not knowing where to go. I looked at the paper in my hand. The letters were dancing. It didn't make sense. Around me, people were walking in a hurry. Everyone knew where they were going, except me, 17 years old, fleeing the war, hoping to find my aunt in America. And now I was lost on the other side of the world, in a place called Ireland. Cold, strange, scary. But for the first time in years, one thing was true. Nobody was going to hit me tonight. No one was going to stitch me up again. Nobody was going to use me. I was free, even without knowing what to do with this freedom. Ireland was grey, not the grey of war, not the grey of smoke and death. It was a soft grey, wet, as if the sky were crying all the time, but without anger. I found the address Hassan gave me after hours of walking. I showed the paper to people on the street. Most looked away. Some pointed in directions I didn't understand. Then an elderly woman with white hair and kind eyes took my hand and led me to the door. It was a grey building. Of course. Refuge Center, the sign read. I went in. A woman behind a counter looked up. She spoke something in English. Too quickly. I showed them the paper. She nodded. She picked up a phone. More words that I didn't understand. A man appeared. His skin was as dark as mine. He spoke Somali. I almost collapsed with relief. Oh, are you asking for asylum? Try. Name. Ifrah Ahmed. Age. 17. He wrote everything down on a form. He asked about my family, about the war, about how I got there. He didn't ask about other things, so I didn't tell him. They took me to a hostel, old building, smelled of mildew, small rooms divided by thin curtains. Other women were already there, mostly African, some Arab, all with the same tired expression. They gave me a bed, a thin blanket, a pillow. I lay down and slept for 2 days straight. When I woke up, a Nigerian woman was sitting on the bed next to me. You're new, she said in broken English. Try. It's safe here, but it's difficult. Lots of waiting, lots of paperwork, lots of questions. I nodded. I didn't know what else to say. You need to learn English, she continued. Otherwise, you'll be lost forever. 2 weeks later, I was called in for a doctor's appointment. Mandatory, they said. All refugees had to do it. I entered a white room, too clean. It smelled of chemicals. A doctor greeted me. Young, blonde hair tied in a ponytail, professional smile. He spoke in English, slowly, as if speaking slowly would make me understand. An interpreter translated, You need to get checked out, routine, to see if everything is all right. Absent. She asked me to lie down on the examination table, to put my feet on the footrests. My heart raced. I knew that position. I knew what came next. No, I said. She stopped. She looked at the interpreter. Just a pap smear, Quick, doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt you, I thought. But I had no choice. Refugees have no choice. You either obey or they send you away. I lay down. I closed my eyes. I tried to be somewhere else. I felt the cold touch of the metal. And then she stopped. I heard the sound of her taking off her gloves. Quickly, as if she had touched something dirty. I opened my eyes. She was pale. Her eyes were wide open. She called another doctor. They whispered. They looked at me. They whispered some more. The second doctor approached. Can you explain what happened to you? The interpreter translated. I didn't understand the question. Your body, she continued, her voice trembling. You had surgery, operated, cut, sewn. Ah, Aquilo. Yes. When I was 8 years old. Who did this? My uncle? He's a doctor. The two women looked at each other, horror on their faces. This is... Good heavens, the first doctor murmured. And it was at that moment that something broke inside me. Not breaking the pain, not breaking the trauma. It was the shattering of the illusion. They were horrified. That was normal for me. That's what every Somali woman went through. That's what my grandmother called protection. It wasn't normal, it was horrifying. I returned to the hostel in shock. I couldn't stop thinking about their faces, the fear, the disgust. That night, I sat with other Somali women in the hallway. Were you cut? I asked quietly. They looked at me, surprised. Of course, one replied. All of us. But here in Ireland, aren't women like that? Silence. No, another said slowly. It's different here. And they think it's wrong. Try. I closed my eyes. My whole life. I thought that's how it was. That all women in the world went through that. That was tradition, culture, protection. But it wasn't. It was mutilation. The next morning, I went to the local library. I had seen the building while wandering aimlessly through the streets. I went in. Silence. The smell of old books. A librarian looked at me. A kind smile. I pointed to a bookshelf. Books with flags. Language books. She understood. She took me to the English section. I picked up a children's book. Colorful illustrations. Simple words. Cat, dog, house, tree. I sat in the corner. I started reading. Slowly. Stumbling over every word. But reading. Months passed. Every day, I went to the library. Every day, I spent hours studying. The librarian, Mary, started helping me. She pointed out words. She corrected my pronunciation. We didn't talk much, but she always smiled when I arrived. And gradually, English began to make sense. Not perfect, but sufficient. Enough to understand the news on the hostel's TV. Enough to read pamphlets about refugee rights. Enough to search on the library computer. Female genital mutilation. Hundreds of results. Medical articles. Testimonials. Statistics. 200 million women affected. Complications. Infections. Hemorrhage. Death. Chronic pain. Psychological trauma. Illegal in almost all European countries. Except Ireland. I read that again. Ireland. No specific legislation against FGM. Something ignited inside me. I started talking to other women at the hostel. Ethiopians, Eritreans, Sudanese. They had all been cut. They all thought it was normal. But it isn't, I said. They call it mutilation here. They say it's violence. Violence? A woman laughed bitterly. Our own mothers did it, our grandmothers. How can it be violence? Because it hurts, because it kills, because nobody asked us if we wanted it. Heavy silence. A young Ethiopian girl began to cry. "I thought it was just me," she whispered. "I thought there was something wrong with me." I held her hand. "There's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with what they did to you." That night, I looked in the mirror. For the first time in years, I really looked. Thin face, deep-set eyes, scars that no one saw but that I felt every day. "My name is Ifrah," I said to the reflection. "I am not a victim." My voice trembled. I tried again. "I am not a victim." Firmer. "I am a survivor." Even firmer. And I will not be silent anymore. The next day, I looked for a social worker. Young, Irish, red hair. "I want to tell my story," I said, my English still broken but determined. She blinked, surprised. "Your story?" "Yes, about FGM, about what happened to me." She picked up a pen, a notepad. "Okay, I'm listening." And for the first time in my life, I spoke. Not everything. I still couldn't talk about everything, but I talked about the cut, about the pain, about discovering that it wasn't normal. She wrote every word, tears in her eyes. When I finished, she said, "You're very brave." Brave. Courageous. I didn't feel brave. I felt angry. Anger at the women who held my legs. Anger towards the men who cut my body. Anger at the culture that called that protection. But mostly, anger at myself for having remained silent for so long. This anger didn't destroy me. This anger built me because anger has power. And I was about to learn how to use it, not to hurt, but to change. To shout so loudly that no one could pretend not to hear. To ensure that no other girl would go through what I went through, thinking it was normal, thinking it was her fault, thinking I had no voice. I had a voice, and it was time to use it. 2 years in Ireland. My English still had a heavy accent, but it was fluent. I had obtained refugee status, legal documents, permission to work. I got a job at a coffee shop, minimum wage. My hands always smelled of coffee and milk, but it was my money, my job, my life. I was still living in the hostel. I was still sharing a room with other women, but now they were friends, not just survivors in the same place. And every night, after work, I studied. Not English. I already knew English. I studied human rights, laws, non-profit organizations. I wanted to do something. I didn't know exactly what. But I knew that standing still wasn't an option. It was on one of those nights that I met Aisha, Sudanese woman, 22 years old, 8 months pregnant. She arrived at the hostel late, crying. She clutched her belly as if she could protect the baby with her hands alone. "What happened?" I asked. "Hospital," she sobbed. "I went for an exam. The doctor saw what they did to me. He said the baby won't be able to be born normally. That I'll need surgery." I sat next to her. "Everything will be all right. They know what they're doing here." "But I'm ashamed," she cried. "Ashamed of my body. Ashamed of not being normal." I held her hands. "It's nothing to be ashamed of. It never was." But my mother said, "Your mother was wrong." She looked at me, shocked, as if I had blasphemed. "Our mothers did what they thought was right," I continued. "But it was wrong, and we can do it differently." The idea started small. What if we created a group, just to chat, to share stories so they don't feel alone? I spoke with social workers, with local NGOs, with the library. Mary, the librarian, gave up a room. I made pamphlets by hand. I wrote in Somali, Amharic, and Arabic. Meeting for immigrant women. Safe space. All are welcome. First meeting. 3 women showed up. Second, 7. Third, 15. We sat in a circle. We drank tea. We talked about homesickness, about the difficulty of adapting, about racism, about loneliness, and gradually about FGM. How many of you were cut? I asked at a meeting. They all raised their hands. How many of you have talked about this with someone before? No hands. That's what we need to talk about, I said, because silence is what keeps this going. An older Eritrean woman shook her head. But it's tradition. We can't simply... Tradition that kills, I interrupted. Tradition that causes pain. Tradition that takes away children's choices. But our daughters need to be accepted. They need to get married. Your daughters need to be alive, I replied, and whole. Heavy silence. Then, a young voice. I'm not going to cut my daughter. I looked. It was Aisha. Her belly was huge now. When she's born, I'm going to protect her. In a way that no one has ever protected me. Other women nodded. Some cried. And I knew it was bigger than me. I officially founded the United Youth of Ireland, small NGO, tiny office, just me and 2 volunteers. Objective, to help young immigrants integrate, learn the language, find jobs, build community, but also talk about FGM. We create workshops, educational sessions, we invite doctors, social workers, community leaders. We faced resistance, a lot of resistance. Somali men called me a traitor. They said I was bringing shame to the culture. Older women said I didn't understand, that I was too westernized. I received messages, anonymous, threatening, you're going to pay for this. Who do you think you are? Go back to your seat. I was scared. Of course I was, but I was angry too, and anger was stronger than fear. I decided to do something daring, a beauty pageant, Miss Ethnic Ireland, not about the body, about history, about courage, about representing their communities with pride, and most importantly, about speaking publicly about FGM. The media loved it. Newspapers, radio, TV. Somali refugee creates contest to talk about genital mutilation. Suddenly, everyone wanted to interview me. I sat in studios with lights that were too bright, microphones in my face. Why do that? Because 98% of Somali women have been mutilated. And nobody talks about it. But isn't that part of the culture? Culture does not justify violence. Aren't you afraid of retaliation? I do, but I'm more afraid of staying silent. The threats have increased, but also the support. Women would stop me in the street. They would hug me. They would cry. Thank you for speaking. You gave me courage. My daughter won't go through that. And each hug gave me strength to continue. I met Joe Costello at a human rights conference. Irish politician, Labour Party, intelligent eyes, genuinely interested. Did you know that FGM isn't illegal in Ireland? I asked. He blinked, surprised. That can't be true. Yes, there's no specific law. Women are mutilated here and no one is punished. This needs to change. Then help me change. He smiled. Let's start a campaign. 2 years of struggle, meetings, petitions, testimonies. I went to Parliament. I spoke to politicians who looked at me with discomfort. I told my story. All the details, unfiltered. I saw men look away. I saw women cry. This happens here, I said, in Ireland, now, with Irish girls from immigrant families. and you can stop. The law was approved. FGM is officially illegal in Ireland. Penalty: up to 14 years in prison. When they made the announcement, I was in the gallery of Parliament. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Joe hugged me. "You did it," he said. "We did," I corrected. But I knew it was more than just the law. It was a symbol. It was a message. It was hope. But it wasn't enough, because changing the law is one thing. Changing mindsets is another. And in Somalia, 98% of women were still being mutilated, including my cousins, my nieces, girls I couldn't protect. I received an invitation to a conference in the European Union. It's about women's rights. I went, I spoke, I told my story again. Then a woman approached. Somali, elegant, powerful. "I am the Minister for Women's Rights in Somalia," she said. "And I need you." "For what?" "To come back, to work with me, to change the country." My heart stopped. "Go back to Somalia?" "Yes, I know it's dangerous. I know you have reasons to never come back. But you have a voice, and they need to hear it." I remained silent. To return to the place that destroyed me, to the place that stitched me back together, to the place that made me run away, but also to the place where thousands of girls were being cut at that very moment. I bought the ticket that same night. I didn't tell many people. I was afraid that if I thought about it too much, I would change my mind. On the plane, I looked out the window. White clouds, endless sky, and down there, somewhere, is Somalia, my country, my nightmare, my mission. I didn't know if I would come back alive, but I knew one thing: if only I could save just one girl, just one, it would be worth it. And I wasn't going to stop at just one. Mogadishu had changed, but I didn't have that either. New buildings next to ancient ruins, cars honking, children running through the streets. The war wasn't over. It had only changed form. Shootings were still happening. Bombs were still exploding. But there was an attempt at normal life amidst the chaos. I stayed in a small hotel, armed security at the door. The first night, I didn't sleep. Every noise scared me. But in the morning, I got up, I put on conservative clothes, a hijab covering my hair, and I went to work. The ministry's office was modest. The fan was broken. Piles of documents were everywhere. The minister greeted me with a hug. "They're welcome back." I don't know if welcome is the right word. I laughed nervously. "You are brave for being here." "Or crazy." "Both," she smiled. "But we need brave, crazy women." The work was intense. Meetings with community leaders, old men with long beards and even longer opinions. "FGM is tradition," they said. "It cannot be changed." "Slavery was also a tradition," I replied. "And it was changed." "You have been corrupted by the West." "I was saved by the West because nobody here saved me." Tension, always tension. But gradually, some began to listen. I met imams who were willing to speak out against FGM, who said it wasn't in the Quran, that it was a cultural practice, not a religious one. I knew midwives who wanted to stop working, but they were afraid of losing income. FGM, family health support, was how they supported their families. "What if we create a training program?" I suggested. "Teach them to be modern midwives with a salary." The minister nodded. "I'm going to look for funding." But change was slow, painfully slow. Then 2018 arrived, and with her, Dika. I heard the story at a community meeting, woman crying, torn dress, trembling hands. My daughter, she sobbed. My Dika. What happened? She was cut. She bled. She didn't stop bleeding. My stomach churned. Did you take her to the hospital? Yes, but it was too late. Silence. She was 10 years old. 10 years, the same age as so many girls being cut at that exact moment. Can I meet the family? I asked quietly. I went to their house, a tin shack, dirt floor. The father was sitting outside, empty eyes. I'm sorry, I said. He didn't answer. I went in. The mother was lying down. She wasn't crying anymore. She had no more tears. She tells me about Dika. She looked at me. For a long moment, I thought she wasn't going to speak. Then, slowly, it began. She liked to read. She was intelligent. She wanted to be a teacher. Voice breaking. That day, she begged me, Mom, I don't want to. I'm scared. But I told her it was necessary, that all girls do it, that I was going to protect her. Silent tears streaming down their faces. Protect her from what? I killed her. I killed her myself. I held her hand. I was speechless. I asked for permission to make a documentary, a short one, just 10 minutes, about Dika, about what happened, about the real pain, the real consequences. The family agreed. If this saves one girl, the father said, then her death was not in vain. We filmed it with a cell phone, nothing professional, but it was real. Mother telling the story, father showing a photo of Dika smiling, younger siblings crying. I interviewed the midwife who performed the procedure, old, trembling hands. I didn't want to, she said, but it's my job, it's how I eat. And now a girl is dead. She broke down in tears. I posted the documentary on social media. Simple title, Dika, 10 years and a stolen future. In 24 hours, 50,000 views. In 1 week, 500,000. In 1 month, viral. Messages started arriving, hundreds, thousands. Mothers saying they weren't going to cut their daughter's hair. Parents apologizing for what they did. Young people saying they now understood why it was wrong. But also threats, many threats. You will pay. Traitor. Unfaithful. Security guards told me to be careful, not to walk alone, to avoid public places. But how could I stop now? Something unexpected happened. Parents started taking their daughters who had recently been cut to the hospital, scared, desperate, wanting to avoid what happened to Dika. I coordinated with hospitals. We ensured that girls received treatment free of charge. We saved 20 girls, 20 who would have bled to death, 20 Dikas that didn't become statistics. The Attorney General of Somalia called me. We're going to sue. Prosecute whom? The midwife. The parents. First criminal charge for FGM in the country's history. Heart racing. This is huge. You made it happen. Dika made it happen, I corrected. But there was still something I needed to do, something I had been putting off. I needed to see my grandmother. She still lived in the same area, different house, but same neighborhood. I knocked on the door. My heart was pounding. She opened it, older, more frail, but her eyes were still the same. Ifrah? Hello, Grandma. We were silent. Then she hugged me, strong, desperate. I thought I'd never see you again. We sat down. We drank tea. We talked about trivial things first. Cousins, uncles, who got married, who died, who had children. Until I asked, why? She knew exactly what I was talking about. She sighed. Wrinkled hands clutched the cup. Because that's what was done, what my mother did to me, what her mother did to her. But it hurt. You knew it hurt. Of course I knew. But I also knew that if I didn't do it, you would be rejected. No man would want you. You would become nothing. I almost became nothing anyway. She looked down. I know. Do you know what happened to me? The rape, the forced marriage, the escape. I heard stories. And you still think you did the right thing. Tears in her eyes. The first time I'd ever seen my grandmother cry. No, I don't think so. But at the time, I thought I was protecting you. Protecting myself from what? Of shame, of rejection, of becoming like the women who weren't cut and were killed or expelled. I took a deep breath. Grandma, the 3 feminine pains you always talked about, the incision, the wedding night, childbirth. Try. It doesn't have to be painful, not if we stop cutting. She remained silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. Perhaps you're right. I left her house with something I wasn't expecting. Peace. Not complete forgiveness, not forgetting, but understanding. She was a product of the system, just like me. The difference is that I managed to get out, and now I could help others get out too. I went back to the office, piles of proposals waiting. National Program for Abandoning FGM, Forest Genetic Might. Partnership with the UN, training of community leaders. It was so much work, so much to do. But for the first time, I felt it was possible. Real change. Tangible. One afternoon, I received a message from a mother who had watched the documentary. My daughter is 7 years old. My mother-in-law wants to cut her hair. I said no, we argued. But I won't give in. Thank you for giving me courage. She smiled. Tears welled in her eyes. A girl. Just another one. What if every woman I touched saved a little girl? And each girl would grow up and save another. That's how change happened. Not all at once, not with legislation alone, but with voices, one at a time, until they become a chorus. Today, I look back and see an 8-year-old girl being held down on the ground, screaming, bleeding, thinking it was normal. And I look ahead and see 8-year-old girls playing, without fear, without pain, without being cut. Not all of them. Not yet. But more so than before. And even more so tomorrow. And then more, until one day, no girl will go through this. None of them will think it's normal. No one will carry shame that doesn't belong to them. That's my dream, my struggle, my voice. And I won't stop until that dream becomes a reality. Because I am no longer a victim. I am a survivor. I am an activist. I am hope. And you? Have you ever needed to transform your pain into purpose?
This was just one part of Ifrah Ahmed's transformation. From a silenced girl to a global voice against female genital mutilation. Today, Ifrah continues her tireless fight. As a gender advisor to the Somali government, as the founder of the Ifrah Foundation, as a world-renowned activist, her story inspired the film A Girl from Mogadishu. Her work saved hundreds of lives. Her courage gave a voice to millions. The goal is ambitious, to eradicate FGM by 2030. And with people like Ifrah leading the fight, this goal is not just a dream, it's a real possibility. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share it, because someone, somewhere, needs to hear that it's possible to transform the deepest pain into the most powerful change. The full story of Ifrah Ahmed, with more details and resources, is in the first pinned comment.